Margaret Walsh had been the CEO of Harrington Financial for 11 years. At 57, she wore tailored gray suits that spoke of authority, carried herself with practiced confidence, and commanded boardrooms with ease. But at 3 in the morning on a Tuesday in late October, none of that mattered anymore. She sat on the cold tile floor of the 14th floor corridor, her back against the wall, her expensive briefcase abandoned beside her. The divorce papers had been finalized that afternoon. Her daughter Emily hadn't returned her calls in 3 weeks. And earlier that evening, the board had questioned her judgment on a decision she'd made with complete certainty 20 years ago but now seemed to be unraveling. The building was silent except for the hum of fluorescent lights. Margaret had driven here instead of going home to her empty house in the suburbs. She didn't even remember riding the elevator up. She just knew she couldn't bear to be alone in that house tonight, with its empty rooms and the photographs she kept meaning to take down. That's when she heard the soft sound of wheels on tile. David Chen had been cleaning offices at Harrington Financial for 6 years. At 61, he'd learned that night shift work suited him. It gave him days free to take care of his grandson Tommy, ever since his daughter passed away from cancer 2 years ago. Tommy was 9 now, smart as a whip, and the reason David got up every morning. He pushed his cleaning cart around the corner and stopped when he saw her. In all his years working here, he'd seen executives working late, security guards making rounds, even the occasional homeless person who'd slipped past the lobby, but he'd never seen anyone quite like this. A woman in an expensive suit sitting on the floor, her shoulders shaking with silent tears. David had seen enough pain in his 61 years to recognize it when it sat right in front of him. He didn't say anything at first, just quietly retrieved the small thermos from his cart, the one he always brought with hot tea because the night shifts got cold and the break room coffee was terrible. He poured some into the thermos cap, steam rising gently in the fluorescent light, and walked over slowly. He crouched down beside her, his knees creaking a little, and held out the cup. "It's just tea," he said quietly. "Nothing fancy, but it's warm." Margaret looked up, startled. She'd been so lost in her own thoughts she hadn't heard him approach. For a moment she was going to refuse. CEOs didn't accept tea from janitors in the middle of the night. CEOs didn't sit on floors crying. But then she saw his face. Kind eyes, weathered by time and experience. No judgment there, just simple human kindness. She took the cup with trembling hands. "Thank you," she whispered. David settled himself against the wall beside her, keeping a respectful distance but close enough that she wouldn't feel alone. He didn't ask what was wrong, didn't offer empty platitudes, just sat there, a quiet presence in the darkness. They stayed like that for a while. Margaret sipped the tea. It was simple, a little sweet, nothing like the expensive blend she kept in her office. But it was exactly what she needed. "I used to think I had it all figured out," Margaret finally said. Her voice was rough from crying. "Work hard, climb the ladder, provide for your family. I thought that was enough." David nodded slowly. "That's what they tell us, isn't it?" His voice was gentle, with a slight accent that spoke of another place, another time. "Work hard, sacrifice, and everything will work out." "But it doesn't always work out," Margaret said bitterly. "My husband left, said I was married to my job. My daughter, she barely speaks to me anymore. Says I was never there when she needed me, and you know what the worst part is?" She turned to look at him. "She's right. I missed her school plays, her graduations. I missed everything that mattered because I was here, building something I thought was important." David was quiet for a moment, turning his own memories over in his mind. "I had a restaurant once," he said, "back in San Francisco. My wife and we ran it together. Little place in Chinatown. I worked 16-hour days. Thought I was building a legacy for our daughter, you know? Something to pass down." "What happened?" Margaret asked. "Life happened," David said simply. "Restaurant failed during the recession, lost everything. Had to move here, start over. My wife, she got sick a few years after that. Passed away when our daughter was in college." He paused, and Margaret saw the weight of old grief in his eyes. "Then our daughter got sick too. Cancer. She fought hard, but—" He trailed off. "I'm so sorry," Margaret said, and meant it. "The thing is," David continued, "when my wife was dying, you know what she talked about? Not the restaurant. Not the money we lost. She talked about Sunday mornings when we'd close the restaurant and take our daughter to the park. The time we drove up the coast and got lost and ended up having a picnic on some random beach. The small moments, those were the ones that mattered. Margaret felt fresh tears sliding down her cheeks. I don't have those moments. I can't get them back. No, David agreed. You can't. None of us can. But you know what I learned? He shifted a little, his back probably hurting from sitting on the hard floor, but he didn't move to leave. You can start making new ones. It's never too late for that. My daughter won't even take my calls. Tommy, my grandson, he didn't talk to me for 3 months after his mom died, David said. He was angry, at me, at the world, at God. I kept showing up anyway, every day. I'd make him breakfast even though he wouldn't eat it. I'd tell him stories about his mom, even though he'd pretend not to listen. I just kept showing up. Did it work? Margaret asked. David smiled, and it transformed his whole face. One morning he came into the kitchen and said, Grandpa, you make terrible pancakes. And we both started laughing. It was the first time either of us had laughed since my daughter died. After that, things got easier. Not perfect, but easier. Margaret found herself smiling too, just a little. I don't know if my daughter will ever forgive me. Maybe she will, maybe she won't, David said honestly. But you can't control that. You can only control what you do. You can show up, be present. Listen when she's ready to talk. Let her see that you've changed, not just hear you say it. They sat in silence for a while longer. The building creaked and settled around them. Somewhere far below, a car alarm went off briefly, then stopped. You know what's funny? Margaret said. I've paid consultants hundreds of thousands of dollars for advice over the years. Had therapists, executive coaches, all of it. And the best advice I've gotten might be from a conversation on a hallway floor at 3 in the morning. David chuckled. Well, the floor is free. And the tea. He poured her another cup from his thermos. Why are you being so kind to me? Margaret asked. You don't even know me. I know enough, David said. I know you're hurting. I know you're human. That's all I need to know. He paused, choosing his words carefully. Besides, someone was kind to me once when I needed it most. After my wife died, I was lost. Didn't know how to take care of a little girl who just lost her mother. My neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, she was probably 75 years old. She'd come over every evening with dinner, never made a fuss about it. Just said she'd made too much and didn't want it to go to waste. We both knew that wasn't true, but she let me keep my dignity. He smiled at the memory. She taught me that kindness doesn't need a reason. You just give it when you can. Margaret felt something shift inside her, a loosening of the tight knot she'd carried for so long. I've spent so many years being strong, she said quietly, being in control. I forgot how to just be. Being strong is important, David acknowledged, but being human is more important. We're not meant to carry everything alone. I've been alone for a long time, Margaret admitted. Even when I was married, even in a boardroom full of people. I've been alone. That can change, David said, if you want it to. Margaret looked at him, really looked at him. This man in his worn work clothes, with his kind eyes and calloused hands. In the hierarchy of her world, he would be invisible. Someone whose name she'd never know, whose face she'd never remember. But tonight, he'd given her something none of her colleagues, none of her expensive advisors, none of her country club friends had ever given her. He'd given her his humanity, freely and without judgment. What's your name? She asked. David. David Chen. I'm Margaret Walsh. She held out her hand and he shook it. His grip was firm but gentle. Nice to meet you, Margaret. David, can I ask you something? Of course. Are you happy? With your life, I mean. After everything you've lost, everything you've been through, are you happy? David thought about this. Happy is a big word, he finally said. Am I happy every moment of every day? No, I miss my wife. I miss my daughter. Some mornings I wake up and the weight of it all is almost too much. He paused. But then Tommy comes running in, wanting to show me something he drew or telling me about a book he's reading. And I make him breakfast even though I do make terrible pancakes. And I walk him to school and I go to his soccer games on Saturdays. And in those moments, yes, I'm happy. Not because everything is perfect, but because I'm present for what matters. Margaret nodded slowly. I want that, she said. I want to be present. I want to matter to someone, not for what I can give them or what I can do for them, but just for being there. Then start there, David said simply. Call your daughter tomorrow. Don't try to fix everything. Don't make promises. Just tell her you love her and you want to listen. Whatever she needs to say, whenever she's ready to say it, you'll be there to hear it. What if it's too late? It's only too late when you stop trying, David said. Trust me. I've learned that the hard way. Margaret finished her tea and handed the cup back to him. She felt steadier now. Not fixed, not healed, but steadier. Thank you, David, for the tea, for sitting with me, for... She struggled to find the words. For seeing me. David stood up, his knees protesting again, and offered her his hand. She took it and let him help her up. We all need someone to see us sometimes, he said, especially when we can't see ourselves clearly. Margaret picked up her briefcase. I should go home. That sounds like a good plan. She started to walk away, then turned back. David, do you work here every night? Tuesday through Saturday, he said. Same time. Would it be all right if I brought you real tea next time, instead of you sharing yours? David's face broke into a warm smile. I'd like that very much. Over the following weeks, Margaret did something she'd never done in 11 years as CEO. She started arriving early, very early. Early enough that David would still be finishing his shift. And they'd sit together, sometimes in her office, sometimes in the break room, sometimes just on a bench by the elevator. They'd drink tea and talk about everything and nothing, about Tommy's soccer games and Margaret's slow, painful progress with her daughter, about David's memories and Margaret's regrets, about hope and second chances. Margaret learned that David loved old jazz music and could quote poetry in both English and Mandarin. David learned that Margaret had wanted to be a teacher once, before ambition pulled her in another direction. They talked about the world, about getting older, about what mattered and what didn't. And slowly Margaret changed. She left work at 5 instead of 8. She started having dinner with her daughter, even though those first few dinners were awkward and stilted. She listened instead of advised. She showed up at her grandson's first birthday party, a grandson she'd barely met before. She cried and apologized and didn't try to fix everything at once. It wasn't perfect. Her daughter was still hurt, still wary. But there were small moments, a shared laugh, a hand squeeze, a text message that wasn't just logistics. It was a beginning. And through it all there was David, her unlikely friend, the man who'd found her broken on a hallway floor